some more.
Yo, what's good, people? Izzy Max here, back again with the boys for a Week 9 breakdown. Go ahead and say hello.
Hiya, Ryan here, back as usual.
What's going on, guys? Matt here.
So, this week is probably the most interesting week we've had yet. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. For the first game of the week, it was me and Toxic. He played really, really well. This is just my 2 cents. I feel like I was always pressuring with what I had on the field. And after game 1, after gaining some knowledge of what his sets were, I kind of had the upper hand for the rest of the match, and momentum never really faded from my side. That's my point of view. Tell me what you guys thought.
I think I'd agree with that. I definitely think he played well in game 1 and 2. The part that I really want to emphasize above anything else is that strange adjustment to Meowstic in game 3. I think he really shot himself in the foot there. Is just by bringing that. I think he sort of sealed up the set for you.
He also said he didn't realize how Queenly Majesty worked.
Yeah, that's the problem, which is why it seems so weird, because you were bringing Serena in both games. I mean, before that you even maxed it both times. To see that he adjusts to that thing to a prankster user when you're clearly relying on Serena a lot was a little confusing, but that makes more sense. But I think that was really his the biggest part of his downfall.
Yeah, can we talk about my queenly girl for a second? Just absolutely being a unit the past couple weeks. Holy bejeez. I love Serena.
If you realize, this thing got me out of my losing streak, and now we're just kind of rocking and rolling with it.
Yeah, it's a very good mon, and I think it's kind of deceptive in how good it is, because it doesn't have, it has good base stats. It's got a nice HP, nice attack,
It's
but
just
the
well
big
balanced.
But it's just got a nice balanced mon that has an ability that is just super good. Stopping priority is insanely useful against a lot of the teams in the league that utilize a lot of priority moves.
Yeah, I will say one thing. When it comes to Toxic's sets, his Hitmon top was actually Technician, and it was I think it was a roll away from actually KOing full HP Serena if it wasn't maxed. Of course, if it's maxed, it never kills. But yeah. I thought that was kind of cool instead of bringing Intimidate.
I like the offensive Hitmon tops whenever I see them. They're always really neat.
Yeah. I think that's it for this one. The match was kind of straightforward after game 1. Yeah. Next, go ahead.
Yeah, so this one was a little rough. Took my first loss of the season. My feeling is that it kind of had to happen sometime. I think you guys were probably a little bit more confident about me going undefeated than I was, at least. But this one, it came down to a few things. I think I ended up being my whole draft, I think, ended up being more weak to Porygon Z than I had anticipated. Especially next to my Lodic. I EV'd my Duraludon specifically to KO Porygon Z with a Max Darkness followed by a Max Wormwind, as long as I went for Helping Hand on just one of those attacks. But the problem with that is that both of those Max moves activate competitive. So a lot of the stuff I wanted to do, I also thought about a fast Snarl on Crocodile, but again, competitive. So the Porygon Z Milotic ended up being a huge problem, and props to Dark King for identifying that. One of the other main issues was the Choice Scarf Dracozolt, which I absolutely underprepared for. I think if I was expecting that, I would have definitely brought a Mungus, probably with the normal Resist Berry. But so considering what he brought, not bringing a Mungus on my part was definitely a big mistake. I was sort of just hyper focused on him either maxing Dracozolt or Porygon Z. I didn't expect him to bring out both of them. I fully expected like a lead with one of them next to a support mon like Fungus or Grimmsnarl, which is also why I had a Mental Herb on my Togekiss. I was fully expecting to get taunted. And I also figured I knew I was going to max Duraludon. I knew I had Thunderbolt, and Porygon Z and Dracozolt are also Pokemon that are known for using Max Lightning, so I figured Amoonguss was probably not going to be able to Spore very much, so that was kind of my reasoning behind not bringing it. But considering the Scarf Dracozolt, it was definitely a mistake to not bring that thing. So
yeah, I was
kind of my 2 cents.
Oh yeah, sure.
But
no.
I should also say though, I don't want to chalk this up to just a bad matchup, because that I feel like that sort of does a disservice to the way that Dark King played and prepped. His prep was actually really good, especially with the Scarf Dracozolt. I was not prepared for that, and he made that call. He also ran a special Incineroar to get around my
Iron Defense
Ferrothorn, which I brought a couple of times and made the decision to bring again here. So he called that one correctly. And then of course just identifying that Porygon Z and Milotic was a very strong combination. He did well.
I will say, after talking to him, he said 2 of the crucial plays that ended up winning him Game 1 and Game 3 was, 1, you not realizing the Dracozolt was scarfed at first for Game 1 and it KOing the Togekiss, and then Porygon going in on the Duraludon. And then, of course, he lost Game 2, and then Game 3 was actually the switch on turn 1 from Dracozolt to Milotic.
Yeah, and I did anticipate that, because I protected Togekiss in Game 2 and just blew it up with a Max Wormwind, and I opted to not do that Game 3. But just the simple fact of switching to Milotic, getting those competitive boosts, and saving Dracozolt in the back for when Duraludon had been dealt with was a really good call on his part. I did identify a few plays in Game 1 and 3 that if I had done something differently, I could have. I think I could have taken either game, but obviously that's not what happened. So props to Dark King for that.
I also want to talk just a little bit more about the prep. So first things first, the Porygon Z was a very, 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 very good bring. I looked at your team, Matt, and I actually thought, Porygon Z is pretty good here. And I was glad to see he brought it. And he didn't end up bringing these 2 mons, but I want to give him huge props for Scizor and Fungus, especially Scizor. Because if you look at what you brought, Scizzor's actually pretty solid. It hits Crocodile pretty hard. It hits Togekiss pretty hard. And it hits a lot of your mons like relatively well. Like it wouldn't have like necessary. Like I'm glad he didn't bring it, because he knew that it wasn't going to work out in his favor. He knew the 4 mons he needed, but I'm glad that to see those 2 there, because he thought there might be a Game 3 where Fungus or Scizor like come in and do really good work, and he knew that those mons could win the matchup, which I thought was really cool. Like even mons that weren't used. Also, the Mud Shot on the Milotic was super cool.
Definitely, that was a good bring.
So I'm going to tell you something weird. The Scizor was actually there to beat Chandelure.
That's cool.
It's going to sound real weird, but it was actually Akaberry with enough special defense to live in Overheat.
Okay.
And then, of course, if it's Sash like he brought a couple times, Bullet Punch would take care of the Sash.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. He said he needed a 6th mon, and that's what he decided. So I was like, all right, hey, if it works.
Hey, that's cool. And also the Akaberry just kind of makes sense, because even Togekiss Heat Wave, you're always got to be worried about that.
One big thing I do want to point out is, if you look, he only has 1 grass type in Fungus, and that's not dealing with the Rotom Wash. So he actually brought Mirror Coat on the Milotic to deal with the Rotom. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Milotic set overall was very, very good. That being one of the reasons why.
Yeah, and the Incin was really good here too. I like special Incin when you see it. It's kind of rare.
It was AV, I do believe.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that makes sense. I'd want to be AV in the matchup too here, because you want to make sure that you're living hits from Kiss and Rotom and Duraludon, because you're going to anticipate those mons to be here.
Yep.
So no, really, like, huge props to Dark King. I mean, this is a huge win, and
This
very,
win
very,
also
very
locked him
respectable
in
showing.
the playoffs.
Yeah, and it did. He's locked in playoffs now off the heels of this, and I think that's well deserved. So
For sure. Okay, next up, we have Hub and Tay. This one was just kind of unfortunate. Tay prepped for the weather war, and Hub said, nah, I'll underspeed you and win. That's pretty much what happened.
yeah, go Trick Room. I do think the Snorlax not being accounting for Sandstorm Chip to activate Berry was an interesting call. I don't think I'm quite brave enough to do that, but props. Personally speaking, I like getting my Citrus Berry back immediately, so
it was
I don't know. Yeah, our Iapapa Berry, but you gotta respect that, I guess. No, this was just a good match, and it makes sense too. The Trick Room mode really ended up working well. It's kind of scary in my head, but you kind of look at the team a bit and you go, well, wait, Snorlax is especially bulky enough that Poltegeist can't go in. You can redirect Vicious Wrens pretty easily with Togetic, so it's not doing what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Trick Room as well is really good against Stop and Dracovish.
Also, retrospectively, as soon as Cobalion went down, Dragalge just goes in.
Yeah, no, and that's for real. And also, just Cobalion is good, but it doesn't really kill Snorlax unless it gets the boost.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kill the Togetic first, and after a Belly Drum, that Max Quake is just killing. So, honestly, huge props to Hub, because, I mean, basically, she found the win con and just rolled with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that she went for the Snorlax here, especially because I feel like it's been a more underutilized part of her draft. She usually goes more for just the weather mode and or Cinderace. So I think it was a good kind of fake out here. I think from Tay, I sort of feel like he's not really changing his sets up enough to really do what he needs to do. We saw some of the same stuff from Whimsicott. Obviously, Beat Up was on it, but we saw the Worry Seed. I don't really know how useful that was here. I think I would have really loved to see a taunt from that thing. Taunt is just so good against Hub's team. When I was playing against her, it was one of the first things I decided to put on my Liepard, and it's able to just shut down the Togetic so well. It's just a full support Pokemon that's probably not going to be running a Mental Herb, so it's the biggest taunt bait Pokemon I've ever seen in my life. And I think with the Beat Up lead, I think a taunt on that thing turn 1, and then a Beat Up into Max Knuckle turn 2 into the Snorlax may have just
the whole set.
The game.
So I'm going to defend Tay a little bit here because I didn't know this didn't work either. Worry Seed was actually for the Mimikyu.
Interesting. Okay.
But you cannot Worry Seed Disguise. And that is why when you watch the replay, it failed. And at that point, Tay was pretty much defeated. Because he knew that if he could get the disguise gone, one-shot the Mimikyu, kind of, deny Trick Room, but the Worry Seed didn't work.
Yeah.
So at most, the Mimikyu got its disguise busted. And at that point, Trick Room went up, Snorlax went in, and it was just kind of GG from there.
Yeah.
So not knowing how that interaction worked is kind of unfortunate because I didn't know it didn't work like that either.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good idea,
but
at the same
just
time,
worked there better.
I mean,
yeah.
Fair.
I mean, you could have just accomplished the same thing by just attacking, since Whimsicott is faster than Cobalion anyway. You could have just gone for a Gleam or a Moonblast followed by a Steel Spike.
Yeah.
I also don't know if the Cobalion had Steel Spike.
Huh. I feel like you'd want Steel Spike against Hub's team because of Hermons, but I don't know.
I understand wanting Rockfall for the weather, but Steel
I think
Spike
that was the main
for the
reason.
Togetic seems important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do Rockfall, Skill Spike, and then probably like SD or something. I don't know what the last slot
On
would
the
be.
other hand, though, if Hub did end up going weather mode, I do think Tay kind of actually wins.
Oh no, definitely.
So like, I'm not gonna discount what he brought or his prep, because if Hub did bring weather, I think Tay wins the match. But
Oh,
since
I
Hub
agree,
went
hardcore.
since Hub went Trick Room, it was kind of rough.
Yeah.
So next up, we have Brock and JohnBoy. Another
Good
upset.
win
Go ahead, Ryan.
for my boy. Yeah. All right. So we have some notes from both players on this match. I'm gonna go ahead and open those up, but I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit. First thing you need to know on Brock's end was that this is actually weakness policy Rillaboom, which I think is actually a really good bring. He doesn't bring it very often, and it was a Grassy Seed Gust Driftblim, which I think is actually kind of cool. He brought Gust, presumably both to proc weakness policy, but also he used it, I think, offensively once or twice in the matchup because it like can break sashes and stuff, which is kind of nice.
I think it killed the Ribombee with a helping hand.
Yeah, it did. The Driftblim was a support set with Tailwind and Strig Sap and Ally Switch. The Rillaboom was a weakness policy set that worked pretty well for him. And you'll notice Gardevoir's sitting here with 4-0. It was actually a Life Orb Guard set. And just really had a good matchup against the team. Like Psychic Fairy, if you're looking at this team, Psychic Fairy hits his whole team like well.
Right.
Like neutrally or super effectively. And
especially with the Tailwind support, because the matchup against like Roserade, for example, can be kind of shaky. But if you're faster, yeah, you're good.
But yeah, no. Tailwind game 1 apparently kind of won that set for Brock. Tailwind off Driftblim, let Gardevoir sweep. Because game 1, JohnBoy went for a specially offensive Arcanine support set thing, and he used Burnout, but he forgot that Burnout is you can't use it. You can't use it again. Yeah, you can't use any more fire moves, which is kind of unfortunate. So it ended up just kind of yeeting the weakness policy Rillaboom game 1, and it didn't do anything. But then even with it down, Brock still managed to turn it around just off that weakness policy Gardevoir, which I think is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And then game 2, weakness policy Rillaboom kind of went in. So
yeah,
I really like seeing Gardevoir doing so well here. Over the generations, it's just felt a little bit more and more useless every time. Especially now that it doesn't have its mega anymore. It's just a little bit lackluster. So it's really cool to see it doing work here, and it does have a good matchup against a lot of the stuff that John could have brought or did bring.
Now I don't remember in the notes, but I think if JohnBoy realized that he couldn't click fire move again, I actually think JohnBoy would have won. I think both competitors said that JohnBoy probably would have won game 1.
Yeah, he would have won game 1. I don't know though if he wins the rollback on game 2 though.
Right.
Because the Rillaboom was carrying Quake.
Right.
It was carrying Max Quake specifically to just obliterate Arcanine. Like at +2, I think it killed most sets. So
right. Yeah. So yeah, kind of unfortunate. Again, I think out of the matches we've already talked about, 3 of the games had something where the competitors didn't understand how the interaction actually worked. Worry Seed, Queenly Majesty, Burn Up. So,
yeah, and honestly though, this is a nice win for Brock, and it actually locked his playoffs, which is really nice.
Yep.
And it's just it's good to see too, because I feel like coming off the heels of losing to Tay the week prior, Brock kind of needed a good win, and JohnBoy's a really, really hard competitor, and a very good player who brought a really good team.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I'm glad to see that a little bit of innovation on his part ended up winning him the set.
Right. I think that's about all for this one. Next up, C-Rad and Nin. This was a really good game. It really was.
Yeah, it really was.
Some notes from the coaches. C-Rad, again, forgot about safety goggles, and now knows that Rage Powder doesn't work on grass types. So again, another match where a competitor doesn't know the interactions.
Except this time it didn't bite him too bad.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
He also did realize it mid-match. When you watch the video, you can kind of see him going from confusion and frustration to realizing what just happened. So
Yeah. One cool thing I really like was he actually brought G-Max Corviknight instead of regular Corviknight, just so he wasn't boosting his speed because he did have a Trick Room option in the back. I thought that was
which
kind
is
of
so
interesting.
cool. So cool. Love that.
yeah, and Corviknight in general just was the savior of this game. Otherwise, the beat up stuff with Virizion was just would have ran right through him.
Yeah, it would have been way too much.
Let's talk about our lad Haxorus carrying the whole set.
Oh my god.
I love the title of the video he posted is
row.
Haxorus is nuts.
And
then
it did nothing.
It did nothing. The whole both sets.
I do like how Galissapod is a chonky boy, and it freaking lived a max airstream from the Corviknight.
I love
like holy
y'all
crap.
are always sleeping. Y'all are always sleep. You're all asleep at the wheel. Galissapod is basically a legendary. Anyway, the big thing I kind of noticed from this game is actually that Nin had the potential to win both games and was very close to winning both games. In fact, I'd argue game 2 in particular.
Yeah.
He had a pretty good shot. However, C-Rad just played that endgame out super well. Had C-Rad not played that endgame out correctly, had he basically made a wrong read, Nin would have actually won game 2, I think.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was kind of unfortunate that kind of played a role in Nin losing was Weavile never hit a 3-hit triple axle. It hit 3 two-time triple axles.
Yeah,
but
that's
never...
just the risk with the move, though.
Yeah, that sucks. One thing I do want to say towards the end of the game, I think targeting could have been a little bit better. And I'm going to say this kind of oddly. So, he was trying to get rid of the Corviknight, when in reality, he should have liquidationed the Rhyperior and then sucker punched or prayed for a high roll on a liquidation to kill the Corviknight. I think that was the way around it. But in that position, targeting is going to be very, very hard.
Also, I would like to compliment C-Rad. I want to talk a little bit about sets too. In terms of sets, Focus Sash Tangrowth was such a hugely important bring, which is so weird because Tangrowth is already pretty bulky. So a lot of the time you don't think you want to run it with Focus Sash because it lives a lot of hits, right?
I think it makes a lot of sense here, though.
But it really made a lot of sense, and I think it won him game 2 and game 1, straight up. I think that being a Focus Sash set was key. I also think that the Togedemaru, if it just had Zing Zap, I mean, man, he would have probably won game 1.
Oh yeah.
It just needed that offensive pressure, and Togedemaru was a good bring here. I like what both trainers brought to deal with each other's mons. I feel like they both did the correct prep for each other.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just add a couple things at the end here. I'm glad you brought up that Focus Sash Tangrowth, because if you didn't, I was definitely going to. It's one of those. This is one of those situations where you have a really bulky Pokemon like Tangrowth that you probably want some kind of type resist berry on it, because there's some stuff that's gonna one shot it even though it's really bulky. But do you want a Koba berry for the boosted max airstream on Virizion? Do you want a Yachi berry for Galarian Darmanitan? Do you want an Aka berry for regular Darmanitan? You have there's all these hits that these different type hits that you really want to survive, and just tossing a sash on that thing is it covers all up.
Yeah, and what else needs the sash? C-Rad does not have a team that is lacking in bulk. It's a pretty bulky team. But no, a really good game, and I want to really emphasize huge props to both C-Rad and Nin. C-Rad played around game 1 and game 2 just expertly, especially that end game 2. He really pulled all the stops. And huge props to Nin too, because that was a good game 1, and his prep was good, and his play was pretty good too. I don't have any complaints about how Nin played those games outside of, I think that you're right with the liquidation, and I think that would have been better. But I can see where Nin's head was at that game too.
He had to call.
Galissapod is in a bad position there, and
he had to
so
call a
slow.
protect, and the protect from a Rhyperior in that situation was kind of
Makes
obvious,
sense.
but he didn't. Yeah, he just didn't do it. He knew that he had the calcs he needed. But that's it from this one. Moving on. Oh, this one was unfortunate.
This
First,
one just broke my heart, man. I was rooting for Hunter to get into the playoffs, but it's still possible mathematically, but it's looking pretty unlikely
this
now.
one made it very hard. Kudos to Jizzy for winning his first game. Like, I will give him props where props is due. But this is very unfortunate for Hunter. Looking at the notes that was sent to me, there were two very important crits. One that won game 2 for Jizzy and one that won game 3 for Jizzy. Which kind of sucks, but that's the game we play, and this is just unfortunate. If you look at the numbers, Durant just kind of went in. Had the most kills this week. Also, Alcremie kind of went in with the 5 kills.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, yeah, crits are always unfortunate when they happen, but they are part of the game. And also, like, to be honest with you, Hunter did not have a lot to deal with Jizzy's team. Really. He had...
Yeah, the Durant matchup is hard.
The Durant matchup's so hard for Hunter's team, and he didn't really have good ways around it. And I think he brought good mons, but I just don't think... It's hard to know where the call kind of should have gone to, you know? Scrafty was definitely good here. I like Scrafty a lot. It kind of helps with the Alakazam and DD lead. And the Intimidate support's nice for Luxray and Durant and yada yada. I think that was good. I think Alcremie's, like, it's good on paper against Jizzy's team, especially with what he's usually been bringing, and it did pretty well. Kingdra's solid with max airstream stuff off Hurricanes. I honestly feel like just like Specs Hurricane would have been nice here. I don't know if he did that or not.
No, I think it was the Specs Alcremie. No, I think it was Scarf Alcremie because it outsped Alakazam.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's an unfortunate match, but like I do want to give Jizzy props. Jizzy's actually been improving his play a lot. His match with Brock was really good, and I know his other matches, this match was obviously very good. And Jizzy's in an interesting position where he cannot make playoffs, but he can very heavily affect playoff placement with his next couple games.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate he decided to flip the switch so late in the season.
Yeah, because he's been playing really well, and if he manages to get a couple more wins and like squeeze out 2 more wins before the end of the season, he can really, really, really affect a lot of people's playoff races in like a big way. So props to Jizzy for getting his win of the season. And yeah.
Anything from you, Matt?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
Just rough loss for Hunter. Good for Jizzy picking up a win. But yeah, I was definitely hoping to see Hunter in playoffs, and it's looking unlikely now.
Yep. So moving on, these are the key games for next week. Me versus Tay. Not so big for me. It is big for Tay. He is in that bubble. Next is Brock and Dark King. This is more of a placement match. They are both locked into playoffs. 5 wins is a lock. So again, this is just a placement match. Another placement match is Hub and John. Again, they're both locked probably in the top 4, so this is going to be kind of big. And then lastly, the Toxic versus Hunter match, probably the biggest match of the week.
Yeah, biggest for sure.
Loser goes home. Winner still has a mathematical chance. You guys go ahead and give me inputs on these 4 matches.
Yeah, you and Tay matters a lot because Tay, I think, he's like, of the people on the cutoff, he's one of the safer ones. But losing some diff here could be very bad. And he really should not lose if possible. Brock and Dark King very much just comes down to it's really a placement match, but it's actually kind of a key placement match because they both had really nice upset wins this week. We're seeing like some good like ties between the two in terms of like how things are going for them. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thing is, that could be our 4 and 5 matchup.
Yeah, it really could be. Hub and JohnBoy, it's just kind of to see mostly if Hub is going to get dethroned and where JohnBoy is going to end up sitting. And then Toxic and Hunter's the biggest match of the week, like, period. Like, that is huge for both of them.
For sure.
I'm particularly excited about Hub and JohnBoy because I think it's I think it's interesting that we still have a couple of matches in these last few weeks between a couple of the top players. And this is a matchup I think that on paper I'm not sure if one of them really has
An advantage.
the upper hand. So
Yeah.
it's the result is sort of inconsequential, but I'm just really excited to see how the match itself plays out.
Yeah. Likewise.
Yep. Next slide, we have locks, outs, and bubbles. If you look, the locks have kind of changed. So we now have Hub in first, Matt in second, me in third, John in fourth, and our new locks are Dark King and Brock at the 5 and 6 respectively. The outs are Jizzy and Nin. So Nin, if you look, Nin and Hunter, who is on the bubble, have the same record, but Nin's differential is just way too low for him to mathematically have a chance. Since 5 wins is a lock, he can't really tie and still be in the bubble because of his differential, and Jizzy was out last week. And then in the bubble, we have C-Rad leading the charge for the next lock slot. Right behind him is Tay, with Toxic and Hunter being kind of in the race, but it's going to be really, really hard.
They have to rely on losses is the problem.
Well,
for
the
Toxic and
the
Hunter.
problem is these 4 play each other in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, they do. And they have to rely on consecutive losses. Like for C-Rad to not make the cut, he has to lose twice. Right?
Right, yeah.
Did I get that correct? Yeah.
Same with Tay.
Yeah.
They have one of them has to lose twice while either Toxic or Hunter wins out, and of course they can't both do that since they're playing each other this coming week.
Yeah. So one of them is definitely out, guaranteed next week, and
Yes.
then you're still relying on those two to knock out. So it's most likely going to be C-Rad and Tay Breezy. However, there is a possibility that they could lose both games and that either Hunter or Toxic could take that slot. However, it is, and if Hunter takes it, he's winning it off differential. Like Hunter, we had a serious discussion on if Hunter's actually mathematically out or not, and he's not because of his differential, but it is like, you know,
Right.
very hard. Like,
Well, and looking at this, it looks like these 4 people are competing for 2 more slots. In reality, it's not. In reality, it's kind of 2 separate bubbles because the winner of the Hunter and Toxic match is just immediately out. So it's kind of 2 separate bubbles. It's these guys are in a bubble fighting for the bubble, I guess, if that makes sense.
yeah, they're fighting for that 8th place slot.
Yeah, they're fighting to even be in the bubble, but they're not out yet.
Yeah, and then Tay Breezy and C-Rad are fighting to basically stay in. They're fighting to secure 7th or anywhere from 5th to 8th place.
Yeah,
like,
so
they can secure that.
these 4 guys' differential is actually key. Because even if C-Rad and Tay both lose both games that they have to play, Hunter still has to make up a lot of differential.
He has to get some big wins.
Yeah.
And Toxic cannot make up the differential. He just has to get wins.
Yeah, Toxic has to win both games. If he loses one game, he's done. And I think he plays Matt. And
on his last one.
Yeah, week 11, yes.
Yeah, so he plays Hunter and Matt. Both games are going to be very hard, very crucial. Hunter, I believe, plays Toxic and Brock. And then C-Rad plays, I think, Nin and Jizzy.
Yeah. Which I could see Hunter potentially winning both his matches. I could see him beating Toxic and Brock. There's definitely a world in which that happens. But even if he does that, I'm still not sure he locks is the problem.
Yeah, because here's the thing. He needs big losses from Tay, and he needs big wins from himself. And I don't think either of those games that he has to play leads to big wins.
No.
So he's kind of relying on big losses, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is still hope, but it's pretty unlikely for both of them.
Yeah. Still hope. Just gotta play your cards right. And for the last slide, since we no longer have transactions, it's time for kill leaders. Hooray!
Whoa.
Rhyperior leading the charge next to Venusaur. Duraludon moves up after we did some calculation because we missed a game. He was near the bottom. Lapras is coming up next with Darmanitan, one of the mons that have been brought the least, but is still up there in kills. Ludicolo, kind of the same thing as Darmanitan. Dragapult for me, Dracozolt, Goodra, Gigalith, Durant, and Charizard. If you look at this chart, you're going to see percentages. These represent the percentage of the overall kills that this mon does for your team.
Mm-hmm.
So where you see, for me, instance, in the Dragapult, it only calculates for 22% of the kills my whole entire team gets. So that shows that more of my mons are it's a balanced kill sheet. As opposed to you see Darmanitan getting 40% of the kills for Nin, it shows you that Darmanitan is really the main mon getting most of the kills.
Yeah, no, and there's some fun statistics on here. I like the low end ones. I like Ludicolo, Dragapult, and Goodra, and Charizard all being kind of low in terms of percentage usage. Especially Goodra. I think it's funny it's on the list even because it's 15%.
Yeah.
Basically, which is so small.
Also, if you look at this list, hang on, 25 is the highest kill, but we're basing this off differential. Kill leader gets differential basis, not actual kill basis.
I'd like to discuss how funny it's really cool that Rhyperior is number 1. I think that's so neat. That's very fun. Also, Cinderace is not on this list, which makes me emotionally very happy and fulfilled.
Venusaur's been putting work in, though.
Venusaur's so good. I like Venusaur here. I like Duraludon being near the top. I told people at the beginning, Duraludon's super good, and you're proving me right, Matt, so thanks.
It is the mon that I max most often, I think, so it makes sense that it's up here.
Yeah.
It's done well.
Ludicolo had a lot of good momentum early in the season. It's kind of been losing it a little bit, but, it's pretty solid. Darm has been crazy. Darm just pops off sometimes, man. Dracozolt, I really like seeing on the list because we're seeing Dark King utilize Dracozolt better and better every week.
For sure.
Goodra's a nice one. Goodra's just a fun support mon. Brock does not use Goodra every single week or anything, but man, in the matchups where Goodra's good, it's very good. 12 and 5 is a very good kill death.
Well, and that's the same thing with Dragapult. I've used Dragapult supportive, I think, more than I've used it offensive.
Yeah. And we got Gigalith, which is honestly, I had a conversation with JohnBoy about Gigalith, and I gotta say, man, it's such a cool mon. It's really grown on me watching him use it. Just watching him play with it has made me really grow to appreciate Gigalith a lot more. And it's really good. It seriously is a huge offensive threat. And you just kind of think of it as this sand setting mon, but my man uses it very offensively.
Budget T-Tar.
Yeah, budget T-Tar's very solid.
Matt, anything from you about this?
Yeah, I'm surprised to see a few mons on here, especially from some of the lower ranked teams like Darmanitan and Durant. But I think given what you guys described about the percentages, it does make sense that those mons are up here because they're just getting such an extremely large amount of kills for that particular draft. So. I think it's kind of fun to see them up here. Also surprised. Initially, I was a little bit surprised not to see Cinderace, but considering how often Hub maxes the Venusaur, that does make sense as well.
That Vine Lash is just so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I think that's the only one that has the residual, but no, Charizard's down there at the bottom.
Yeah.
And this isn't the actual kill chart, because there are some mons that are interweaved in here, but this is the kill leader for every team. Coming towards the end of the season, I will have a dedicated kill leader. list. Yeah, this is
Okay.
this is the top Mon from everybody's team. Because like I don't think Charizard's even on the list. Once
Okay,
things
that makes a
change
lot more
up.
sense.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where things ended up. So that is all I have for this week. If you guys have any closing remarks, go right ahead.
Best of luck to our folks in the playoff bubble cut.
Yeah.
Seriously, all 4 of you have had great seasons, and I really want I want to see like a very nice like competitive end to this.
I concur. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of good matches these last couple weeks.
For sure. So with that out of the way, we will see you guys next week. Peace.